Hello, I'm Miss Ginsburg with KnowAtom, and today we're going to be reading Plant and Animal Structures. This is a student reader in Unit 4. A wetlands food web, the Pantanal. The largest freshwater wetland system in the world is called the Pantanal. The Pantanal is in the middle of South America. It is 3 times the size of Ireland. It is a huge basin that receives water from flooded rivers. Picture a giant soup bowl filled with grasslands, savannas, and tropical forests. This bowl slowly fills with water until it overflows in the rainy season. It slowly empties during the dry season. The Pantanal is a tropical wetland. Wetlands are found all over the planet, including in frozen Siberia. Wherever they are found, wetlands are places where the land is covered by water, either permanently or seasonally. They sit between dry land and aquatic environments, and they are home to many different kinds of living things. Why are wetlands so important? Wetlands play an important role in the water cycle. They help to refill groundwater. This is possible because wetlands can store water, acting as natural sponges. They slowly release this water into aquifers. Wetlands also improve water quality because they act as natural filters. For example, some plants take pollutants into their roots and change them into less harmful substances. By the time water has moved through wetlands, many pollutants have been removed. The roots of the plants also help to slow floodwaters and reduce the amount of erosion that takes place. Because of this, all of Earth's systems are connected in wetlands. All wetlands have the ability to hold water, which is the hydrosphere. They also have moist or wet soil, which connects the hydrosphere and geosphere. Finally, they are home to water plants and other living things, connecting the hydrosphere, geosphere, and biosphere. Wetlands ecosystems. The wetlands ecosystem is unique because of its position between water and land. An ecosystem is a community of different organisms that depend on interacting with each other and their physical environment for survival. All ecosystems include living things: oxygen and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water, and energy from the sun. The seasonal flooding during the rainy season in the Pantanal is caused by heavy precipitation that causes rivers to overflow their banks. This flooding carries with it many nutrients. These nutrients allow many different kinds of organisms to flourish in the wetlands ecosystem. Because of their nutrients, wetlands have been called biological supermarkets. For example, the Pantanal is home to the most wildlife in all of South America. There are 3,500 different kinds of plants, 656 kinds of birds, 325 kinds of fish, 159 kinds of mammals, 53 kinds of amphibians, and 98 kinds of reptiles. The Pantanal food web. Different wetlands are home to different kinds of organisms. For example, the kinds of organisms in an Arctic wetlands ecosystem are unlike the organisms in the Pantanal because the climate is so much colder in the Arctic. However, no matter where they live, all organisms need energy and nutrients to survive, grow, and reproduce. Without energy, living things cannot survive. The path that energy travels as one organism eats another is called a food chain. A food web is a visual that shows the network of food chains. It shows the complex set of relationships between organisms that are linked by the flow of energy. Energy begins with the sun. All energy on Earth begins with the sun. As the sun shines, it produces light energy. When the light energy reaches a plant, the plant captures the energy and turns it into food. Plants are living things that capture energy from sunlight for growth and development. Plants can do this because they are producers. Producers are organisms that capture energy from sunlight through a process called photosynthesis. Plants are able to do photosynthesis because they have internal structures in their leaves that collect the sun's energy. These internal structures are called chloroplasts. After chloroplasts collect the sun's energy, they turn that energy, along with water and carbon dioxide, into oxygen and a sugar called glucose. Glucose is food for the plant. Glucose contains chemical energy. It gives the plant energy to grow. Plants store extra glucose in their leaves and other parts. Consumers. When animals eat plants, they get some of the plant's energy. An animal is a living thing that eats other organisms for energy, breathes oxygen, and undergoes growth and reproduction. All animals are consumers. Unlike plants, consumers must eat other organisms for energy and nutrients. For example, the hyacinth macaw is a bird that is common in the Pantanal. These birds eat the nuts of palm trees. Because of this, the hyacinth macaw are consumers. Any animal that eats only plants is called an herbivore. The hyacinth macaw is an herbivore. Many species of insects are also herbivores. When herbivores eat plants, they get some of the plant's energy. The Chaco tree frog is another consumer in the Pantanal. All frogs are carnivores. Carnivores eat only other animals. Other animals eat both plants and animals. These are called omnivores. Decomposers. When animals and plants die, living things called decomposers will eat their remains. Decomposers are organisms that break down organic material and feed on the nutrients. Organic is anything that is living or was once living. Decomposers put nutrients, or matter, back into the ground. Plants will then use those nutrients to grow. Many insects, such as termites and ants, are decomposers, getting nutrients from plant or animal matter. Many fish in the Pantanal get nutrients by consuming decomposing plant and animal parts. Decomposition happens slowly in the Pantanal because of the regular flooding. Runoff from the uplands carries with it sediment and other nutrients. This makes the soil very fertile. Pantanal Organisms Guide. Grasses. Plants that get their energy through photosynthesis. Green algae. Microscopic plants that live in the water and get their energy through photosynthesis. Aquatic plants. Plants that float in the water's surface, getting their energy through photosynthesis. Passion fruit, a tropical fruiting tree. Pacu fish, an aquatic animal that eats aquatic plants and green algae in the water. Capybara, a semi-aquatic animal that grazes on grasses, aquatic plants, and fruits. Insect, an animal that feeds on aquatic plants and fruits. Snail, a mollusk that feeds on green algae and grasses. Tadpole, the immature stage of a frog that lives in water, eats green algae. Ibis, a bird that feeds in aquatic areas, largely on insects, tadpoles, snails, and grasses. Tegu, a lizard that feeds on snails and tadpoles. Rainbow cichlid, a fish that feeds on aquatic plants and insects. Horned frog, feeds on insects and cichlids. Giant otter, feeds on cichlids, snails, frogs, and capybara. Egret, a bird that feeds on lizards, insects, pacu fish, and cichlids. Jaguar, a mammal that feeds on capybara, caiman, and frogs. Caiman, a semi-aquatic reptile that feeds on pacu fish, lizards, and ibis. Bacteria, termites, and fungi use dead organisms and non-living organic matter as a food source. Wetland plants, watching the wetlands breathe. In 2013, a scientist named Chris Helzer set up a photography project in a wetlands region in Nebraska. The goal of the project was to capture images of the wetlands over time. Scientists wanted to see changes that they might otherwise miss. Helzer was surprised to see that one little wetland pool of water kept changing size. This pool was filled with exposed groundwater. The pool started out full in the morning. It dried up throughout the day, but then it would fill with water again the next morning. Looking through his photographs, Helzer realized that this change in water levels happened in a regular daily pattern. He realized that he was watching one part of the water cycle in action, the movement of water from Earth's surface back to the atmosphere. Watching the repeating pattern of dropping and rising water levels in a wetland is fascinating, Helzer wrote in a blog post about this photography project. It's as if we're watching the Earth breathe, which in some ways we are. A plant system. The plant, a system. The small pool of water kept changing in size because of two related processes. The first process was evaporation, the process of liquid water changing into water vapor. As liquid groundwater is heated by the sun, its molecules speed up and spread out, turning into a gas. The other process was transpiration. Remember that transpiration is the evaporation of water from plant leaves. Transpiration moves water through plants from roots to their leaves and then back into the atmosphere. In order to understand transpiration, it is important to first know about the structures of a plant. Structure refers to the way in which parts are put together to form a whole. A plant structure allows it to function. Function is the normal action of something or how something works. Think of a plant as a system. Each of its structures have a specific function. When all of the structures function in the way they are supposed to, the plant will be able to get what it needs to survive. A plant's structures. For example, all plants have roots. The roots help to anchor the plant against the forces of wind and moving water. The roots also keep the plant upright and balanced. They also gather water and nutrients and transport them to the rest of the plant. The stem supports the leaves, fruits, and flowers. It also transports water and nutrients between the roots and the rest of the plant. The stem also absorbs some water, although not as much as the roots. The leaves have the most chloroplasts to help create food for the plant through photosynthesis. So here's a plant structure, right? We've got the leaf, fruit, flower, stem, roots. Transpiration. Leaves also have structures that allow them to take in carbon dioxide from the environment and release oxygen. Plants are constantly exchanging gases in the same way that people are always breathing. To do this, they have pores called stomata that open and close to take in the gases. When the stomata are open, some water evaporates back into the environment through transpiration. After plants absorb precipitation from the ground through their roots and the stem carries it to the leaves, some of the water evaporates back into the atmosphere. This is why transpiration is part of the water cycle. The amount of water that a plant transpires depends on several factors. Light, heat, humidity, and wind all affect how much a plant will transpire. For example, when it is really hot, plants often pull in a lot of water through their roots and release it into the atmosphere. They do this to try to cool off. The type of soil the plant is growing in also affects transpiration. For example, plants that live in dry soils might close their stomata during the hottest time of the day. They do this to try to keep that moisture so they don't dry out too much. In the wetlands, there is plenty of water, so plants continue to transpire during the hot times of the day. This is why the small pool of water in the Nebraska wetlands would dry up every afternoon. Some of the water evaporated into the atmosphere, and the rest of it was transpired by the plants. During the nighttime, temperatures cooled off, and so transpiration slowed down. This allowed the pool to refill with groundwater. The cycling of life, structure and function. The hyacinth macaw is the largest of all parrots that can fly. It has bright blue feathers and a strong beak to eat the kernels of hard nuts and seeds. These birds can also use their beaks as additional feed to hold on to trees. The hyacinth macaw is one of many kinds of animals that live in the Pantanal because of the rich nutrients available. Plants and animals have structures that help them survive in their environment. For example, the jaguar is one of the most famous animals in the Pantanal. It is a top predator in the Pantanal food web. It has large canines and powerful jaws that allow it to kill its prey. It also has a spotted coat to help it blend into the environment. Life cycles. When an organism is able to get what it needs to survive, it can complete its life cycle. A life cycle is the series of developmental stages an organism passes through on its way from birth to death. There is a pattern to the changes that all living things go through as they grow and develop. All life cycles include birth, growth, reproduction, and death. Reproduction is the ability of a mature organism to have offspring. Without reproduction, a group of organisms would die out. A water lily's life cycle. A water lily is a kind of plant that is common in the wetlands around the world. It is a flowering plant that cannot reproduce on its own. Instead, it depends on insects for pollination. Pollination is an important part of flowering plants' life cycle. Many insects eat a powder that plants make called pollen. As they are eating, they get the pollen on their bodies. When they move to another plant, the pollen falls off onto the new plant. Pollen is what makes seeds grow inside a flower. The seeds is the first step in a flowering plant's life cycle. The seed protects the plant in a protective coat as it travels from its parent to a new location. With enough light and warmth from the sun, the seed will start to germinate and grow. During this step, the plant breaks out of its seed coat and begins to sprout. It grows roots, stems, and leaves. With leaves, it can capture energy from sunlight. In the third step, the plant grows buds and flowers. Flowers are external structures where seeds form and where pollination occurs. Flowers attract pollinators so the plant can make new seeds. Finally, the plant produces fruits that attract animals or produce seed casings that allow the seed to travel by wind or water. The seeds grow and start the plant life cycle over again. So we have a flowering plant's life cycle: seeds, growth, pollination, seed dispersal. Amphibians of the Pantanal. Some organisms have life cycles that are connected to the cycling wet and dry seasons in the Pantanal. For example, during the rainy season, many different kinds of amphibians grow in the wetlands environment. Amphibians are animals such as frogs, toads, and salamanders. They live the first part of their life in the water and the last part of their life on land. There are at least 40 different kinds of amphibians in the Pantanal, including the South American horned frog. This frog has a powerful, sticky tongue that can catch prey up to half of its body size, including insects, fish, and other amphibians. The South American horned frog is found in wetlands because it survives in shallow water as well as moist soil. A frog's life cycle. The South American horned frog, like all amphibians, changes its entire body during its life cycle. To change means to make something different from what it is now. This change from an immature form to an adult form is called metamorphosis. The frog's internal and external structures change to help it survive in its environment. An adult female frog can lay hundreds of eggs in the water. Frog eggs are also called embryos. They are surrounded by a jelly-like fluid and are food for many predators. Laying large numbers of eggs means that at least a few will survive. Once the eggs hatch, they turn into tadpoles. Tadpoles are fish-like creatures that breathe underwater using gills and their skin. They grow tails, which they use to swim. They also develop a mouth, which they use to eat algae. Most tadpoles are herbivores, eating only plant matter. Internally, they have a long intestine, but no stomach for digesting food. Those tadpoles that aren't eaten by other animals begin a complete transformation. During this stage, they are called froglets. Some body parts disappear. Other body parts are formed. For example, tadpoles begin to lose their tail and to grow legs. They begin to breathe on land as skin grows over the gills and lungs develop. A froglet has tiny teeth that help it eat. With enough energy and nutrients, the froglet will turn into an adult frog. Adult frogs lose their tail and develop a full set of lungs, as well as powerful back legs. This means they can spend most of their time on land. A frog can go in the water, but it needs to hold its breath to swim. Frogs also have large, bulging eyes. Adult frogs are carnivores. They eat mostly insects. Because of this, adult frogs develop a larger mouth with a strong, wide jaw, teeth, and a tongue for capturing insects. The long intestine of the tadpole decreases in size and a stomach forms. After a year or so, adult frogs return to the water to lay eggs, starting the life cycle over again. Wow, I learned a lot reading plant and animal structures. I hope that you learned a lot too. I'll see you tomorrow with another one. Bye.